Dov Seidman is here as the founder and CEO of LRN. His firm helps companies develop ethical corporate cultures. He writes about that challenge in How. Why how we do anything means everything. I am pleased to have him back at this table. Welcome.
Great to be here.
Good to see you. There is a new foreword here by Bill Clinton, who basically says in this foreword, and you two have become friends, he says, when I was in government, everybody debated two questions. What are we going to do and how much are we going to spend? After my presidency, I wanted to bring people together to focus on a more important question. Regardless of what we want to do or what amount we have to spend on it, how can we maximize our efforts and expand our impact so that our good intentions turn into real change? So this is one thing. You got the Clinton forward. Tell me what else is here.
What else is here?
Yeah.
The world has come to how.
Right.
When we first spoke, we talked about how connected the world had become. We've gone from connected to interdependent to even morally and ethically interdependent. We are so intertwined that the behavior of any one person can affect anybody else halfway across the world in ways it couldn't before. One banker at his trading desk in Europe can lose $2 billion for his firm overnight, wipe out bonuses for all of his colleagues, send more risk into the markets. But at the same time, one vegetable vendor and a few buddies in Tunisia armed with cell phone cameras can spark a revolution towards freedom throughout the Middle East. I wrote that we had entered the era of behavior. We are so deep in the era of behavior. And the moral philosopher, the Scottish moral philosopher David Hume, said that the moral imagination diminishes with distance. There is no distance in this world. We all live in a crowded theater, and we ought not to shout fire. So I think we're in the era of behavior, which is how we do what we do, how we engender trust in our relationships, how we collaborate, how we innovate, and how as leaders we create environments, nations, companies, organizations so full of trust that people lean in, they take the risk necessary to innovate, to create the human progress we desperately need right around now.
Okay, but I want you to help me understand. I mean,
Sure.
We've had, as you know, two huge things happen since 2007. One is an economic collapse, and B, you know, an Arab Spring that you mentioned with respect to Tunisia. I mean, have these events changed your sense of the how happens?
They've revealed how morally interdependent we are, that we rise and we fall together. And they reveal the values that have guided us. You know, one day a historian is going to look back at the last 20 years through the lens of the ideas that permeated society. And these ideas will have been amoral ideas. Just do it. It's just business. Too big to fail. Greed is good. Man is rational, so let's give him carrots and sticks to extract performance out of him. Those ideas maybe did their job when we wanted scale and growth any which way. But today we need to go from greed is good to good is good, from just do it to just do it right, from man is rational to man is in search of meaning and happiness. I mean, Occupy Wall Street is about meaning, isn't it, Charlie?
So are things like Occupy Wall Street going to be the change agents of our time in terms of going to the values that you're suggesting?
They are demanding a how conversation. Let's get real. Let's be truthful about how we've been living and the kind of change and rethinking of fundamentals we need to go on. I sat with a CEO the other day. He runs one of the largest companies in the world. I respect this person. And in a one-on-one lunch, he was vulnerable with me. He said, Dov, it took them 17 days to get rid of Mubarak, and he had a military and foreign military aid. What if my consumers or my employees got rid of me even faster because they didn't like how I lead my company? I mean, look what happened with Netflix and Bank of America. They tried to impose a price increase, and 800,000 consumers just got together, self-organized on the net, and said, we're out of here. Bank of America tried to impose a $5 price increase on the debit card, and consumers got together and said, we're not going to have this.
Netflix has not recovered from that yet.
Even though they apologized.
Right. And they said, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, no, they just haven't, you know, I mean, it was a dramatic misreading of consumer reaction.
Well, we're in a dialogic two-way world. We're having a two-way conversation here. There are no pyrotechnics here. The entire culture of the Charlie Rose Show is about the how we relate to each other.
Right.
Netflix tried to have a one-way conversation. We're going to do this, and we're going to announce this to you. All conversation has to be two-way. What Occupy Wall Street is about is let's have a dialogue. But you know, I think it's about, if I can return to that, it's about one more thing. There is a lot of anger out there about perceived injustice.
Yeah, it's about fairness.
It's about fairness. I actually think we need to think that it's about something even deeper. Because I try to connect Rome, Occupy Wall Street, Oakland, Tahrir Square. And I think it's about not anger, but anguish. You know, we're all connected. People want to participate. And people want to control their destiny. They want companies to trust, to safeguard their confidential information. But people want to get on a journey of meaning and want to have a career. And I think what we're seeing is people are saying, I've played by the rules, I have an education, and I'm not on track. I can't even get a job. So I actually think it's about the human dignity that people are crying out and saying, I want to play, I want to participate, and I want to get on a path that's sustainable.
Yeah, but there's, at the same time, there is a sense that the system doesn't work. The beginning development system doesn't work because I did all this kind of stuff. I played by the rules. I did what I should have been. I was a good person, you know, and...
Well, that's why they're trying to tear down the system,
yeah.
right? But when you tear down, when too big to fail, the final nail in its coffin happens in Egypt when Mubarak is thrown out. And too big to fail happens in Penn State when Papa Joe can get tossed out on a phone call. What these protesters are doing is they're saying this system is standing in the way of my ability to get on track, so I'm going to tear it down. The problem is when you tear things down, you create freedom, you create space. You create freedom from dictatorships, oppression, or a system that's getting in your way. But freedom too, which is in our tradition, freedom to pursue happiness, meaning, a career, freedom too requires values and frameworks and principles. And the hard work ahead of leaders is to create the opportunity for freedom too, which is to root ourselves in values.
Now, what do you do for these leaders? I mean, what kind of engagement do you have?
Well, we work with the senior executives of companies to take a deep look at the forces that shape how they behave as organizations and how their individuals behave. And then we create platforms where we can reach and enter the hearts and minds of all of their people to help them navigate the risky areas of their lives, but to transcend that which is legally required of them to do what is ethically inspired of them. We help them live their values. And we're at an extraordinary time. Chevron is now the human energy company. Cisco is now the human network. Dow is now the human element. Ally Bank says, we speak human. Delta Airlines is advertising, 1 ounce of humanity is stronger than 500 tons of steel. These companies understand that they've entered a new era. Let's have a relationship with our own people and consumers, not through how we make money or our products, but who we are and how we stand for. And what we help companies do is take these proclamations and translate them into corporate practices, leadership, and individual behaviors that allow them to win in the marketplace. I said earlier that we're in the era of behavior. I'm also saying the competitive advantage has shifted in this era of behavior to how we do what we do in 2 fronts. We are not having a crisis every 20 years. If we did, we can stay the core. We can hunker down, be resilient when we have a boom and bust cycle, and then we can get going and have prosperity for the next 10 to 20 years. But we are experiencing crisis every 10 days, in some cases every 10 hours. So now more than ever, we need a bulwark to ensure that we don't careen side to side, that simultaneously propels us forward. And the only thing ever invented that can protect you from lurching from greed to fear and push you forward are values.
Do you think most people want to live their values? They want to, but they become corrupted, or they become, they develop an attitude that is not a winning philosophy.
All behavior comes from values. We have no choice. We're living our values, our deepest convictions. There are 2 types of values that guide behavior. There are situational values. Those values guide what we do in the situation.
Then there's sustainable values.
Sustainable values. We can think in terms of what we can and can't do, how much we can get out of each situation, and we tend to have transactional, arm's length relationship with people. And then there are sustainable values. These values literally sustain human relationships. These are the human values. We know what they are: honesty, integrity, truth, trust, and hope. In the last 10 to 20 years, we were in the grip of sustainable values, and we scaled them in our operations. We built massive organizations that scaled sustainable values with rules and policies and carrots and sticks to extract performance out of people. And now we need to return to sustainable values. And I'll illustrate this for you. If a friend came to you, Charlie, in crisis and said, I need $20,000, you would not have a how much conversation. How about 15? You wouldn't say, call your credit card company and raise the personal debt ceiling. You'd have a how conversation. How are you living your life? And how can I help you get back on track?
You say lots of things here in this book, and then lots of things in the consulting you do with corporations. Among other things you say is that technological advances are becoming, are creating a persistence of memory in electronic form.
Well, my reputation, whatever it is, I hope it's worthy of being here, but it preceded me before I got here, and it'll stay here long after I'm gone. Everything we do is in digital footprints and just travels around. And we can no longer control our story, but we can control how we live our lives and how we conduct ourselves. The problem is, and the challenge is that technology has thrust us together faster than we have developed human frameworks to get along. People and companies today are in global supply chains. For one of them, a cow is a steak later that evening. For somebody else, it's a sacred being. One person is emailing another, and they can't tell from the email name if they're emailing to a man or a woman. Yet we thrust them together and say, work it out, collaborate, do good together. So technology in some ways has outstripped humanity, and we now need to re-inject humanity into everything we do and scale it through our values.
What's the story of the New York City donut vendor who trusts his customers to make their own change?
Well, so there was a guy selling donuts, and I wrote about him. I discovered him, and he competed with someone across the street. They each had an equally priced fresh donut, but he outsold this guy 3-1. The only innovation he had is he had a tray of change, and he trusted his customers to make their own change. Through how he related to them by saying, I trust you, he generated the loyalty and outsold his competition. This strategy of giving trust away has gone global. The rock band Radiohead made more money when they trusted their fans to pay for what they thought the music was worth, and they got more out of that album than the 4 prior when they put a price on it. Ritz-Carlton now trusts its employees up to $2,000 a day to solve a customer problem. And Indonesia, a country fighting corruption at pretty large scale, instead of more controls, people go into honesty cafes and they take food off the shelves and they put money in a jar and make their own change. And there are now 10,000 of these, and they've put them in schools to start to teach the habits of probity and honesty to boys and girls early in life.
What's the mission of your company, LRN?
It's to inspire principled performance. You know, we think that principles and performance have to fight each other. And I'm a moral philosopher who wears a suit for a living, and I bring it to the rough and tumble world. I always felt that morality is the foundation of capitalism. Very few people know that Adam Smith was the chairman of the moral philosophy department at Glasgow University when he wrote The Wealth of Nations. So in the 90s, I ran around with the message of how, and people said, this is Pollyannish, it's utopian. Then Enron happened, and people said, we need to start to get things right. But we were misguided. We went and built up Sarbanes-Oxley. I argued that we need cultures that do it right. But this time around...
You mean too much regulation was a bad idea? We needed something else? I mean, Sarbanes-Oxley was a lot of added on a whole level of regulation, as does...
It became an albatross.
Right.
If someone goes offshore to money launder, it's working. That's probably why they learn not to do it onshore. But if we create cultures that are committed to doing the right thing and winning the right way, people won't think to behave that way onshore or offshore. But this time around with this global economic crisis, it's very different. It used to be that I would meet CEOs. They would hear the message and they would say, this matters. I'd like you to speak to my goalkeeper. Everybody wants a great goalie, but no one wants to play goalie. I'm speaking metaphorically here. A goalkeeper is the general counsel, the chief risk officer. And the idea was behavior was parked over here. You make sure we don't go to jail, we don't pay too many fines and penalties, but leave business to us. This time around, the CEOs are keeping the conversation because how all 11 players play the game matters in an interdependent world.
Tom Friedman frequently writes about you and frequently calls me about you to say, boy, you ought to see the column, or you ought to see what I've written, or you ought to read Dove's book. And he says, Dove, Seidman basically argues that in our hyper-connected and transparent world, how you do things matters more than ever, because so many people can now see how you do things, be affected by how you do things, and tell others how you do things on the internet anytime for no cost and without restraint. And so it must be with us. We need to get back to collaborating the old-fashioned way. That is, people make decisions based on business judgment, experience, prudence, clarity of communications, and thinking about how, not just how much. That's pretty much a pretty good summary of it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What was it, in just one note of biography, because you have this remarkable record at Harvard and at Oxford. I mean, what was a eureka moment for you? In getting to where you are.
You mentioned Harvard. I didn't get 1,000 on the SAT. I got a 970.
Yeah.
I studied a lot harder for 6 more months, and I bumped my score up to 980. I grew up dyslexic.
Right.
And I think the moment that started it all was in 5th grade. I remember reading out loud, being so scared. When people were reading out loud, I was so scared to get called on that I was in the present, and then I went up to the ceiling of the class, and I tried to figure out the human dynamics. When are they going to call on me? And all I did was practice that paragraph. And I survived by being fascinated with human dynamics. And then I finally got into college, and they started me in remedial English. But history and psychology were taken. But if I were in a history class, I would have flunked because I could not have read 500 pages. And if ever a seeming curse would turn out to be a blessing, the only open class was a moral philosophy class. Mm-hmm. But moral philosophy rewards you for reading 10 pages and wrestling with ideas, good versus bad, how people work. And I just lit up. And I just studied 7 years of moral philosophy. And today I run a company where every conference room is named after a moral philosopher. And it's not a eureka moment, but it's a journey of being passionate about right over wrong. And I'm always struggling with, why is doing the right thing feel so inconvenient, unprofitable, dangerous, unpopular? And there's got to be a way to create a world where they're in harmony and not so at odds. And I think that's the world we're entering.
It's also, too much of the world is based on fear rather than hope.
Many business managers say hope is not a strategy. Show me a plan. I tell them hope is the greatest strategy ever known to mankind. Remember when FDR said you have nothing to fear but fear itself? That's a double negative way of saying don't lose hope. When people don't have hope, they lean out of the world. They're scared and they hunker down. When they're full of hope, they lean in. They see it as a source of meaning. They see people in it as a source of relationships, and they start to think up of possibilities. And when they think these possibilities, they start to innovate. No strategy worth pursuing has a fighting chance if at its core there isn't an abundance of hope.
Dov Seidman, the book is How. Thank you. Great to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.